Spade back here with you, High Noon Leatherworks, for another leather adventure. And today, after Thanksgiving, we're going to do a new project. And we're going to do a leather throw pillow. So I've got some nice pliable leather. I'm going to guess it's probably about 3 ounce or so. I am using a standard sewing machine because this is fairly thin leather. I've done a test stitch here. Everything stitched up just fine. I don't need to use my heavy duty stitching machine because the leather is not that thick. So I think the standard sewing machine, we'll try it, we'll see how it works. I've got quite a bit of this leather here to do this with, and then I've got some poly fill that I'm going to fill it with. So we're just going to try to do a quick little throw pillow, and I'll throw it back in my western room on my couch, and it'll go good with everything else in there. So you could do whatever you want to, whether you give it as a gift for Christmas or just try it out and see what you think. So come on in and let's get started. I'm going to start by putting this leather down here, and I want to cut a couple of pieces 16 by 16. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take my yardstick here, make sure I have plenty, and I'm going to cut this piece with my scissors. I've got some heavy duty shears here, and I want to make sure that I have plenty. I mean, I've got quite a bit of this leather, and I just want to make sure I have enough to do my two 16 by 16 pieces. So I'm basically going to cut this in half. This is a pretty good sized piece. So I'll lay that piece aside. I'll go ahead and turn this the other direction and take my yardstick and measure that at its shortest point here. And it looks like if I cut it in half, about 18 inches, I should have plenty on each side. So I'll turn it and go ahead and cut this up the middle the other direction, and that's going to give me 2 pieces to start with to get my 16 by 16. So I'll lay that one aside. I'll double check my cutting mat. The dark one that's on top is 18 inches. So let's go ahead and start with a good, nice, straight piece with that. And again, I'll use the same straight edge. There's my first piece of scrap. Now I can go 16 from there because I know that edge is good and straight. So I'm going to turn this so that I have a lot more room to measure by. And let's go 16. And I'll just put a small dot there, and the same going this direction. Put a small dot, and then I'll turn it again like I did the first cut, so that I have plenty of room here. And find my dots. There's my first one, and now I lost it in the light. There they are. So I'll go ahead and lay my straight edge down on those two dots. That'll be my first dimension of 16 inches. I'll pull that down where it went off of the cutting mat and trim that the rest of the way. Get that piece of scrap out of the way. Now I've got one dimension of 16 inches here going this way. Now I need to turn it, go 16 inches the other way, but I want to make sure I get it good and square. So I'm going to square it up with my cutting mat, my grid on my cutting mat here. On each side. And that's going to give me a good place to use my grid and make sure I get it square. Because the last thing I want is a pillow that's not square. So now I can go ahead and do I've got 16, 16, looks like I'm a little short this direction, so I'm going to make it a little oblong instead of perfectly square, and go 14 and a half this direction. My plan was to go 16 by 16, but I failed to get enough material that one direction, so we're going to go 14 and a half by 16, make it a little oblong rectangle instead of perfectly square. And again, I have more material. I could recut it, but I'm just going to change my dimensions to fit my material that I've already cut. So there's my 16 by 14 and a half. I'll take my other piece and I'm just going to lay it out like so. put this piece on top of it. And then use my straight edge and cut it out. I know that top piece is already, the corners are squared. So I'm going to go ahead and cut that piece. Probably ought to put a new blade in this knife. Get that out of the way. Now I can turn this around. I really need a bigger work surface, but I don't have that available right now. So I'll put that edge square where I just cut that one. And then use my straight edge again. And cut straight along this side. Move that out of the way. Now I've got two sides of that second piece trimmed. I'll just turn it 90 degrees. And if you didn't want to cut it with the first piece on top, you could always mark it and then just cut it by itself, but I think this is quicker. Kind of skips a step of having to mark it and then cut it. And then the last one, we'll just spin it 180 degrees. Get my straight edge back on top. And make my last cut. And then remove that. So I'll get these scrap pieces out of the way. Put my knife away so I don't have a sharp point out. Get my straight edge out of the way. And now I have my two pieces that I can go ahead and start stitching. Now I want to turn these. Still got a tag on the inside of this. Nobody's ever going to see it, but I'm going to take it off. I'll know it's there. I'm going to turn these to where they face one another, like so. And that's how we're going to stitch it. So we're going to stitch it inside out on 3 sides. So I'm going to grab the machine, bring it over here, change the angle a little bit, and then I'll be back. Alright, so take my two pieces, and I don't have them pinned together or glued together or anything, and I put me a piece of tape here as a guide so I can have something to guide how far over I want my leather to be. And I'm starting in about 1/2 inch from the top because I want to try to guide these through here at the same time, both pieces. Without having to tape them together or glue them together. And then that's going to be another personal preference. You could use two-sided tape, sewing tape. Looks like stitching just fine, double checking it. Keep using that tape as a guide for the side there. And I'm not pulling that through with my hand, I'm letting the machine do it, but I am guiding it. Try to keep these pieces as close together as I can. And keep them aligned with that piece of tape as my side guide there. So as I come to the end here on this corner, I'm going to stop at approximately 1/2 inch from the edge. Go ahead and lift my presser foot. Turn this 90 degrees. I'm still using that tape as my side guide there. Lower my presser foot and go ahead and continue. Now that I have this stitch back here on this side, then it won't allow this to move like it did on the first. So that first stitch is the most critical when it comes to trying to keep those together and not let that move. And you can see I'm not going crazy fast, but the machine is doing a good job stitching this thinner material. I wouldn't want to go much thicker than this on a machine like this. If I went thicker, I'd probably use my heavy-duty cobbler stitching machine, but it's a hand crank machine, so it's gonna take longer for sure. So as I come up to that 1/2 inch corner again, I can lift my presser foot, turn it 90 degrees, lower it, and continue stitching down the third side. And again, I'm trying to make sure that I keep these as even with each other as I can as I stitch. So you see me guiding it with my hand in the back, and I'm guiding it with my hand in the front, the other hand in the front. And I'm just trying to keep that as aligned to this piece of tape as I possibly can. And it is difficult at times, but it's much more difficult on the first stitch, the first side, than it is the others. So as I come to the end here, I'm going to hit my reverse button, go backwards about 5 or 6 stitches, let go and go forward. I'll lock that in. And I'll lock in my other side that I started. I'm going to lock it in as I finish. So I'll lift up my presser foot. I'm going to check my stitch. It looks good. I'm going to go ahead and cut my thread on the front and the back, and then I like to take my lighter and just burn the ends of those, and that seems to help lock them in also. So there's my stitching on those sides. Now what I want to do is take my shears and I'm going to cut those points off of the inside of those, like so. Because I'm going to turn this inside out. So let me change the angle again and I'll be right back. What I'm going to do is turn this inside out like so. And then I'm going to take my finger and push those corners up like that. So that I get a nice corner on my pillow cushion. And then I'm ready to go ahead and put my fill in. So let's do that next. We'll grab our poly fill. And you could buy a pillow, a small travel pillow or something, and do the same thing with it. But I'm going to stuff that fill in there real good. Make sure I get it packed down in those corners where I ran my fingers up in there. I want to get those corners filled. And then just keep stuffing that down in there. So now comes the hardest part, because we have to do a finished stitch on this. I'm going to have to stitch this across this way, because if I fold it in, which is the way I'd want to do it, like this, fold it inside and stitch it together, it's too thick for my machine. So I'm going to try to do it this direction and keep these edges as straight as possible. I'm going to have to hold those. I'm going to back it up and lock it in, and then continue on. And as I do this, I'm stitching it approximately 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And I have to really pay attention to what I'm doing because notice how fluffy this is getting. So I'm going to have to push that fill in there. I don't want to stitch that fill necessarily, so I can still move it around, but I'm going to have to move it and then grab a hold of my 2 pieces of leather and then start stitching again. And you can see how that's moving on my cutting mat, but I'll keep pushing that fill in, getting a hold of my 2 pieces of leather here, keep matching those together. And then continue with my stitching. And again, I don't have to go fast. The key is I want to get it as nice and straight as I possibly can. Speed is not an issue. So I'm coming down toward the end. I want to make sure that I keep it nice and flat together. Then I'm going to back it up. And lock that stitch in. Pull that out. Trim off my threads. Again, trim off excess on either side. I leave about a 1/4 inch. That I can burn. And then I need to trim the thread on the other end. And I'll do the same thing with it. Alright, so now just all we have to do is fluff it up, get that fill around that whole pillow, and you can see how nice and thick it is. It's nice and soft, and if you're like me and you like that smell of leather, it'd be nice to rest your head on while you're laying on the couch. So there's another project in the books. You can see the seams turned out great, and it was just a standard sewing machine and some lightweight leather and some polyfill. So please go check out Kentucky Leather and Hides at KentuckyLeatherandHides.com, and check them out for all of your needs for supplies and leather. They're good people, and I appreciate you coming along. Appreciate you sharing this time with me. Please hit the notification bell. That way you'll get a notification when I upload a new video, which for a long time has been 12:01 a.m. on Thursdays. So if you haven't yet, please subscribe. I appreciate it. And hope you try this. if you have the equipment or borrow someone's sewing machine to try it out, it's a pretty simple project. So thanks again for watching, and as I always say, please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.